Hello there everyone, my name is Crazy Caleb and welcome back to the depths of hell. Today we're going to be taking a look at Forget Perspective. Now I would like to preface before we get into this module that I am using the optimized version of this. There will likely be some form of tutorial on the main version, but for the sake of this tutorial and for the sake of your guys' sanity, I will be using the optimizer. The optimizer makes it a significantly more traversable experience with this module. And this module, if you couldn't tell already, is number one, a boss, and number two, it is a very difficult one to deal with. There's a lot of work that goes into each stage, and it definitely takes a while to get used to. So let's get right into this. So this is a boss, as I just mentioned beforehand. Every time you solve a non-ignored module, the cube itself is going to be what you're going to be noting down here. The colors of the cube will change colors. So, and the way that we're going to note this down for optimized sake is going to be, we're going to take a look at this top one right here, which in this case is represented by blue. Then we're going to go down one space, then we're going to go right, right, and right, all the way around the cube. And then the last one that we have here, the last one that's missing essentially, will be that last color on the bottom face. Because it will always be exactly 6 colors that will be present. In this case, red, blue, green, yellow, magenta, and orange. Every single face will have one of them present. So there's never going to be any duplicate colors that will be occurring. So the face you don't see is the color that is still left. Okay, so to begin this module, let's start noting this stuff down because we have to keep track of the colors of the cube. But there's also one other interesting thing that we have to keep track of that is not actually done on any other boss module ever. This is going to be, you have to keep track of the colors on the cube, pretty normal, and the time left in minutes on the bomb when you solve any other module. And we're going to use the starting time for the first stage. So in this case, I started with an hour, which is essentially 60 minutes. And what we're going to do is we're going to note down the stages here. And it is noted down with this original sequence in step 2. We're simply just going to skip over this. But essentially, it gives you perspective and a net of how this actually works. And I'm going to have Prime Checker up for later on, and you'll see why. So, I just explained to you how to get the cube faces. This is just another diagram to give you some perspective of how it works. Perspective. And let's get the cube. So we have blue, orange, yellow. Blue, orange, yellow. Magenta, green. And the one that is missing in this case is going to be red. We don't have that one. And we're going to note down the starting time for this stage. This is going to be stage. This is also going to be a 60 in this case. Minutes is what we're going to note down. Not the total time, but the minutes. Now, let's start solving modules and let's get into the actual bulk of this work, because this takes a long time to do. So let's get right into this. So next up, we solve this at 57. So this is going to be our next stage. We're going to note down red, orange, green, blue, magenta. Red, orange, green, blue, magenta. The missing one is a yellow. This is going to be 57 for this stage, and we're good to go. Let's wait for this one to go over. It'll now be 56. So now 56 is when we solve this next tool mod. We have red, magenta, yellow, green, blue. Red, magenta, yellow, green, blue. And this last one's going to be an orange. We solve this at 56 minutes. Okay, next up, solving this at 56 minutes again, we have green, blue, orange, magenta, red. Green, blue, orange, magenta, red. And the last one that we're missing is yellow. 56. Next up, another 56. We have orange, yellow, red, magenta, blue. Orange, yellow, red, magenta, blue, green. 56. Next up, 56 once more. Green, blue, yellow, magenta, red, and orange, and another 56. I'm going to wait for 56 to go down, but there's going to be a series of different steps within this module. And the first thing that we need to do is actually a reference from character shift. This is all of the same rules of the module character shift, with some changes, I will admit. There is definitely some differences that don't really need to be pointed out, but they are very similar rules to how all this works. So let's get our next stage. This is going to be solved in 55 minutes. We have red, green, magenta, orange, blue. Red, green, magenta, orange, blue. And that is going to be a yellow for our last one. 55. Okay. Then we have another 55 solved. We have magenta, red, blue, orange, green. Magenta, red, blue, orange, green. The missing one is going to be yellow. 55. Magenta, red, blue, orange, yellow, orange, green. Just making sure I wrote it down right. Okay, another 54. We have red, orange, blue, magenta, green, and yellow is going to be our last one once again. Another 55. For our last stage, let's get 54, just for the sake of it. I like to have a wide variety of numbers here, just to make my life a little bit easier, and also just to teach a wide variety of different cases that you could potentially get here, too. So let's take a look. So 54 for our last stage here. We have magenta, green, blue, yellow, red. The last one's going to be orange. That's going to be for 54. And finally, we're going to solve this last guy here, and it's now going to enter into the stage submission. It's going to It's going to have the cube faces turn on white, and it's going to have the stages you're currently on the left here, and a total amount of stages that you have to input on the right. So in this case, we're on stage 1, and we need to submit 10 stages. So let's get right into this. So for now, what we're going to do is the only thing that we're going to have to worry about is actually getting some edge work here, but we're going to focus on the manual for the most part of this. So first things first, what's going to happen with this module, and why do we have a series of different letters here? And this might seem a bit interesting. So what's going to essentially happen here is the first things first, we need to determine the number of characters we're going to shift. Now, what exactly are we shifting here? Well, what's going to happen is we're going to be shifting the actual letters in each of the colors here. So in this case, Romeo represents red, blue represents Bravo, green represents golf, yellow represents Yankee, magenta represents Mike, and orange represents Oscar. So essentially what's going to happen here is that each of these should be treated as both colors and letters to be shifted. And what we're going to do later on is we are going to be shifting by an amount left or right, and that is going to be the letters that we're going to submit. So already, one of the things that I like to point out is the fact that there's only going to be 6 different letters that you're actually going to be submitting in this module here. You're not going to be submitting a whole bunch of different letters here. You're only going to be limited to 6 letters. However, these letters can be pretty much anything because you don't know exactly what you're going to be shifting by. So let's figure this out. So for step 1, we're going to determine the number of characters to shift one, and you're only going to be doing this once, because once you determine the characters to shift, you already know what you're going to be shifting by, and that's going to be it for this step. So we're going to use the rule equal to batteries times ports modulo 10. So let's take a look at our edge work here. We're going to count up a number of batteries, and it's already going to be 0 because we have both no ports and no batteries, which is quite funny. So our rule is going to be equal to 0. And in this case, if we happen to have an X or a Y present in here, we would have to determine the value of that using these rules up here. Fairly simple ones. Numeric position of last letter in the serial number, and Y is the sum of the serial number digits. Fairly simple. But in this case, we simply get a constant value here. In this case, that's going to be equal to 3. Although all of them will also be constant values. But for now, all we're simply going to be doing is adding 3 to this. Now, what we can actually do here is we can actually determine the values. We can actually determine the characters of what they are going to be submitting by just adding 3 to them. So in this case, if we take a look here, we've got red, blue, green, yellow, magenta, orange. And what we can essentially do is we can already convert these into characters. And we don't have to really worry about having to change all of these into different letters. It's just not worth it. So let's just do this. So we're going to add 3 to each of these characters. Now, we're going to treat this as the alphabetical position. So we're going to do 18 plus 3 for the 18 is equal to Romeo, plus the 3 is going to be 21. This is going to be a uniform. So Romeo is going to be equal to a uniform. Bravo is equal to 2, plus the 3 is going to be equal to Echo, which is going to be 5. Then we have 7 plus 3 is going to be equal to 10. 10 is going to be a Juliet. 25, which is Yankee, is going to be equal to plus 3, which is going to be modulo 26, is going to be a 2, which is a Bravo. Note that there is the possibility of there being obviously the same letters from the colors. However, you should not worry about this. Next up, there's going to be magenta, which is going to be 13 plus the 3, which is going to give us a Papa. And finally, 15, which is the Oscar, plus the 3 is going to be equal to 18, which is a Romeo. Okay, that's pretty good. So now, these characters will always be submitted if we happen to land on some sort of face value, which you will see in just a moment what exactly we have to use here. And what makes this module a very unpleasant experience, in my opinion. But essentially, if you happen to need to submit red at any point, you're going to be submitting uniform. If you need to submit blue, you're going to be submitting echo, and so on and so forth. And that's going to be the way that this works. So we've already taken care of the plus 3. Step 1 is permanently taken care of. We do not need to come back to this step at all whatsoever, which is quite nice. And now we're going to get into step 3. Step 2 is the original sequence. I've already gone over this. That's all we simply needed to do was just read the module. That's the way that it wants you to read it. And now we're going to get into steps 3 and 4, which is going to be a bit weird because this is going to be how most of the stuff works out here. And of course, there's step 5, which is submitting rules. So for step 3, what it wants us to do is it wants us to determine the row or column to use, and this is going to be used in step 4 with this table down here, as you can see. So determine which face is needed by using the table below, using the first rule that applies. Now, this is going to vary from rule to rule because of the fact that this is going to be based off of the number of minutes. And each time you solve the minute is going to be a bit different because of the fact that, for example, 60 is much different than the result of 55, for example. So let's take a look at these rules here. Now, if none of these rules happen to apply for the number of minutes remaining, then obviously you will be using face 6. So the number is divisible by 6. In this case, this applies to 60 and 54, actually. So we can already check off those rules, and we're going to be using face 1 for these guys here. So we're going to mark these with 1. Just a nice simple way of marking that here. Next up, prime numbers. Now, already from the remaining numbers that we have here, we do not have any prime numbers. 57 is indeed divisible by 3, because it's 3 off from 60. As you can see right there. 56 is an even number. 55, obviously divisible by 5. Yada yada. So now, let's take a look at the next rule. Next rule is perfect square. The closest one right now to these numbers is going to be 49, and then that's going to be 64. So no, none of these numbers are 49 or 64 because this is 7 times 7, this is 8 times 8. So that does not apply. Next up, less than 10. None of these are less than 10, so therefore we're good to go. So we can skip this. Even number, here we go. So now all of these 56s are going to be we're going to be using face 5 for this one. So let's mark these as 5 here. 5, 5, 5, and 5. And now, since we've reached the bottom of these rules and the 55 and 57 don't have a face that applies here, we're simply going to be using face 6 for this one. 6, 6, 6, and 6. Okay. So after obtaining the row number, use the column of its corresponding color of the obtained face X. So this is what this is going to be doing here. So the number that we got represent the row. In this case, for face 1, we're going to take a look at the row of face 1. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at face 1 in our original sequence here, and we're going to use that as our column. In this case, face 1 of this sequence here is going to be corresponding to blue, as you can see right here. So blue is going to be in our sequence right here. And now, what these numbers give us in this table is this gives us a structure of reordering the sequence, and it gives us our final sequence essentially. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the first position, which is blue. We're going to take the 5th position, which is green. We're going to take the 3rd position, which is yellow. We're going to take the 6th position, which is red. The 4th position, which is magenta, and the 2nd position, which is orange, and this is our final sequence. This is what we have to do for every single one of these. So, one other thing that I would like to point out, though, is if you look at the table very closely, one of the things that you can immediately determine here is you know for a fact that whatever face you get, and whatever value you get, for example, on that face, that value will always be first. Because of the fact that if we take a look at face 2, every single position has the second face in the first position. In our final sequence. Same thing goes for face 3, for face 4, and face 5. As you can see, the number that corresponds to the row is always in the first position. So that's one little thing that you can help yourself with there, especially in later examples. But for example, we already know the first position of each of these guys here. Yellow is going to be the first position of 57. Orange is going to be the first. Blue is going to be the first. Red is going to be the first. Blue is going to be the first, and so on and so forth. But for right now, let's go back to this one. So yellow, we're going to be using face 6 in this one, and face 6 is indeed yellow. And as you can see, face 6 is indeed represented first here. We're going to go to position 3, which is green, position 2, which is orange, position 4, which is blue, position 5 is magenta, and lastly, red. Okay, same case here. We're going to be using face 5, and face 5 corresponds to blue. Blue is in the 5th position, yellow's in the 4th, no, yellow's not in the 4th, green is in the 4th, magenta's in the 2nd, yellow is in the 3rd, red is in the 1st, and orange is in the 6th. Okay, face 5 again, we're going to be using red this time around, 5th position, then we're going to use 2nd position, which is blue, then we're going to use 4th position, which is magenta, then 1st is green, then 6th is yellow, Then third is indeed orange. Next up, fifth again, we're going to be using blue, because that's in the fifth position here. And we're going to be using 5, 4 magenta, 2 yellow, 3 red, 1 orange, 6 green. That's the end of that one. The fifth position, again, that's going to be the red. That's going to be red face here, so that's going to be this one again. We have red, blue, magenta, green, orange, and yellow, based off of those positions. So next up, we have phase 6 again. Phase 6. And now, the phase 6 for this one is going to be all yellows, which is going to be quite nice. So yellow is going to be used all 3 times here, so we can actually make our lives a little bit simple. So let's go yellow, yellow, yellow. Third position is going to be magenta, blue, blue. Then we have 2 is going to be green, red, orange. Fourth position is going to be orange, orange, magenta. Sometimes you can get like easy work like this where you just kind of do multiple stages at once. Then we have the fifth position, which is blue, green, and green. And finally, the first position, which is a red, magenta, red. Okay, and then finally for our last stage, we're going to be using face value of 1, which is going to be magenta. This is going to be our column here. And this is going to be magenta, yellow, red for the 4th and 5th. Then 6 is orange. Then 3 and 2, which is blue, green. We have our final sequences now. I'm now going to get rid of all of these numbers here because of the fact that we don't need them anymore after this step. And we're going to actually get into the important bit of this. We now need to submit a value here. So this is where the 5th step comes into play here. So, submitting rules. Now, the way that this works is this is represented based off of the steps 1 through 5 of submission, the step 1 of submission in this case, the step 1 letters. Now, the way that the rules actually work is it wants you to take a look at the vowels that you have that can potentially be present. All of these values, all of these letters will be present in all of these sequences, but in some ordered way, some different way. So, one of the things that you would ideally like to have is the 3 or more vowels rule, which is quite the nice sequence to actually get because you actually only have to submit the first letter, which means that you have to just get the face value of each of them, and then that's going to be what you submit. So essentially, if there were 3 or more vowels in this sequence, in this case there's only 2, uniform, echo. The rest of the colors we have Juliet, Papa, Bravo, Romeo, which is unfortunate. All you would simply need to do is simply say, which face am I looking at here? Because of the fact that face 1, the first letter, is always going to be the face that you actually get here. So in this case, if we were to do face 5, for example, we would immediately be able to determine that whatever face 5 was here, which in this case corresponds to the even numbers, we know that for a fact that blue would be our submission right here, which would then correspond to echo, and that would be immediately our submission. Same thing with red. Red would be uniform, blue would be echo, and we would already know the answers to those stages. But in this case, we simply do not have this case. So now, let's take a look. Let's take a look at our next rule. Otherwise, if all letters in the sequence are consonants, submit the 5th letter. Now, unfortunately, there's no rules for this. There's no little cheeky ways of doing that. So in this case, not going to happen. Otherwise, if there's only 1 vowel in the sequence, not true. We have 2 vowels in the sequence. So we're not going to be applying this rule. And it would give you 2 conditions here. If the last letter is a vowel, second character. Otherwise, the 4th letter. Otherwise, it's going to be the 4th letter. But in this case, we're going to be using otherwise. Use the first rule that applies in the table below. So let's take a look. So there are 4 different rules that we have here. If the last letter is a vowel, if 2 consecutive vowels, which in this case, wrapping around means the first and the last one are technically connected together. That's the way that this means. And the same thing goes for the 3 consequentive consonants. So there's going to be 3 consonants in a row. In this case, you would submit the 4th letter. Otherwise, if none of the above happen to apply here, we're simply going to be submitting the last letter here. So let's take a look, and let's see what we need to pay attention for. So we need to pay attention for red and blue, because these are what we're going to be worried about right here. Because these represent our vowels here. Let's take a look. So do we have any characters that are the last letter is a vowel? We do actually have a couple. Red, red, and red right here. So we're then going to be submitting the 2nd letter for these stages. So the 2nd letter for this one is going to be green, which corresponds to a Juliet. And that's going to be the letter for that stage. This one right here, the 2nd letter is a magenta, which corresponds to a Papa. And the 2nd letter for this one is going to be blue, Blue corresponds to echo, not corresponding to Yankee in this case. So let's take a look at our next rule here. Now, next up, what we want to do is we want to take a look at the two consecutive vowels. And then we're going to be submitting the third letter. So we want to see if the red and blue are connected together in some way, shape, or form. Not on this one, not on this one. This one doesn't have it yet. This one does have it right here. So we're going to be submitting the third letter, magenta, which is a papa. Red and blue are not connected. Red and blue are connected here. That is good. So we're going to be submitting magenta again, which is papa. Very similar to that exact stage right there. Only the yellow and orange actually swapped here. Next up, red and blue are connected right here. The third letter is red. That is going to correspond to uniform. That's our stage right there. Red and blue are not connected. And now we need to take a look at the last rule here, which is going to be three consecutive consonants. So now let's take a look at the last few sequences that we have left here. So there's two vowels here. There's two vowels here. This is not true. There is two vowels here. There's two vowels here. This is not true. There is three vowels here because the blue and the red are the only. There are three consonants rather. Excuse me. There are three consonants in this position right here. Blue and red are only two vowels. Therefore, this applies to this sequence here. So we're going to be submitting the fourth letter for this position, which is a yellow, which is a bravo. Okay, and then for the last one, yes, this last one down here for stage 10 is indeed true because we have magenta, yellow, and then we have the green. This is where the wraparound is very important. In this case, this is true, so therefore we're going to be submitting the fourth letter for this one, which is orange, which is Romeo. Okay, and now that we have reached the end of this, we have reached the end of the rules here. None of the above applies. We're now simply going to be submitting the sixth letter for these last few sequences. In this case, orange is our sixth, which is a Romeo, and green is our sixth here, which is a Juliet. And now, we now can submit these letters into the module. So we have Romeo, we've got Juliet, we've got Bravo, we have Papa, we've got Juliet, we've got Papa, we have Papa, we have Uniform, we have Echo, and we have Romeo. And just like that is a solved module. As you can see, that boss takes a while to explain and takes a while to do. It definitely is a bit of a lengthier one to understand. And if this were on a challenge bomb, what my advice would be is it would be finding a case where three or more vowels applies, so that all you simply have to do is you have to simply figure out what the shifting rules are, and then submit the first letter each time. That would be just the most ideal way to do this, because all you simply need is the first face, or you need all faces rather. But all you simply need is that first little sequence right here, and then just submit whatever face you get there. Hopefully that makes sense, and I hope you guys understand that. Let's go into one more example. I will decrease the bomb size a little bit because of the fact that that can take a very long time to do. Now, a couple other things in this manual. If there happens to be, there does happen to be a lookup table here, which does actually help give you cases where vowels can apply, in this case 3 or more times. 2 is a nice one, and I think 2 is actually the only one that applies. The greens represent all consonants, in this case, as you can see. The blue is the only case that actually happens to. It's a bit of a unicorn, to be completely honest, and it's actually quite hard to get. And the reds represent the 2 vowels cases apply. And I believe the whites represent only 1 vowel appearing. So in this case, that's going to be the way that you're going to help yourself determine what you're looking at here. Now remember, this is shifting forward. These are all positive numbers, and these are only going to be shifting to the right, as you can see. There's Romeo, Sierra, Tango, Uniform, Whiskey, Victor, Victor, Whiskey, rather. These are all going to be shifting forward, but there is the possibility of there being negative shifts. For example, subtract Yankee can apply. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, this is fairly simple to understand. It is fairly simple to do. It is just not ideal or fun to do, in my opinion. So let's decrease this to, let's only do 5 stages this time. I don't think we really need that many stages. And let's take a look and let's see what we actually get. But this table will help you shift through here. And as you can see, case 3 unicorn explains exactly what I said. Just submit the corresponding face of ends color. Ends color is determined from step 3. Fairly simple to do. And in the case of a half unicorn of all consonants, just submit the corresponding face colors determined from the table below, which actually is quite helpful. It actually does save you a lot of time here. So if you ever run into these unicorns, you obviously can help yourself using this here. And in the case quarter unicorn with one vowel, you can take a look here and see what we have going on. Fairly simple. And otherwise, I suggest using I suggest you use the original method. However, you can use the table from case quarter unicorn to check whether the last letter is a vowel as a shortcut. I don't think it really changes much, but that's just a couple of little unicorns that it covers in that manual. And I hope that helps. So let's take a look at our next stage here. At our next module here. Okay, so let's start solving things. So we have yellow, red, orange, green, and magenta. And this is going to be a blue for the last stage. We're now going to be solving this at 58. This was 60, by the way, again, so it's going to be 58 for this stage. We have magenta, green, red, yellow, blue. That was for 58, and the last color was orange. 58. Next up, green, orange, magenta, red, blue. That's going to be a yellow for this last stage, and that was for 58. Next up, we have orange, green, blue, magenta, yellow, and a red for this last one, 58. And for the last stage, we're going to do 58 for all of them. Yellow, magenta, blue, green, red. And that's an orange for the last stage. And finally, 58. And let's solve this bomb. Okay, let's do this. So now, doing a bit of a smaller example here. Let's take a look. So first things first, what's our shifting going to be? So we have red, green, blue, magenta, yellow, orange. Let's figure out what our letters are going to be here. And hopefully we can maybe get a nice unicorn case, but I doubt that. So batteries, 0. It's the exact same case. Great. So we're going to be adding 3. It's going to be the exact same sequence that we got. So it was uniform, echo, not uniform, Juliet, echo, magenta is Papa, yellow is 25, so it's going to be Bravo, and that's going to be Romeo for that one. All right, sorry about not getting a new sequence, but this is just what you're going to have to put up with. Let's take a look at our last one here. So we're going to be taking a look at face 1 for this one here. 58 is not a prime number. It's not a perfect square. It is not less than 10. It is going to be face 5, even number. So 5, 5 for the rest of these here. I'm just going to mark this one as 5. And now let's obtain the final sequence. So for face 1 is going to be our probe. And for face 1 here is going to be yellow. And our final sequence is going to be yellow. Position 5 is a magenta. 2 is red. 4 is green. 3 is orange. And 6 is blue. And for face 5 for the rest of this, this is going to be what? Face 5 is going to be blue for this first one here. So it's going to be blue. Then position 4 is yellow. 2 is green. 3 is red. 1 is magenta. 6 is orange. Okay? Same thing for the rest of these. This is going to be blue again. So blue. Blue, red, orange, magenta, green, yellow. Then yellow for this one. That's going to be yellow, magenta, red. Then 1, 2, 3, orange, green, blue. And finally, for this last one, it's going to be red here. Red is going to be 5, which is red. 2, which is magenta. 4 is green. 1 is yellow. 6 is orange. 3 is blue. Okay. And now we have our final sequences. So in this case, we happen to have the exact same case apply here. So let's just take a look at this table down here. So the last letter is a vowel. First off, let's take a look. Do we have any red or blue in the last position? We do actually have quite a bit. That's quite nice. So last letter is a vowel. We're going to be submitting the second letter. The second letter is going to be magenta in all 3 sequences as well, which is quite hilarious. So this is going to be 3 papas right here. Papa, Papa, and Papa. Now, let's check. Do we have consecutive vowels? Do we have these red and blue? Do we have the red and blue together in any of these sequences? We do in this one. Not in this one, though. So we're going to be submitting the third letter. The third letter is an Oscar, or orange in this case, which corresponds to Romeo as our letter. And finally, do we have 3 consecutive consonants? No, we actually do not. The 2 consecutive consonants, 2 consecutive consonants, the vowels are split up apart perfectly to prevent that. So in this case, none of the above applies. Our 6th letter is going to be Oscar, which also corresponds to Romeo. So in this case, Papa, Romeo, Romeo, Papa, Papa. And just like that is a solved module. As always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to stay crazy, stay cool. 2019 is done for tutorials. I'm very happy with this, considering how long this module has gone without a tutorial. Um, and thank you guys so much for all the support you guys have had, that you guys have given me. It means a lot, and we're gonna keep chugging through. We're gonna keep doing this. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.